We've all thought it at one point, so let's just go ahead and make it happen. Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, when it comes to the Goku Black saga, it was definitely a major turning point within the world of Dragon Ball Super. Back then, Super was in a very precarious position. It was very much a contrived piece of media with tons of issues and concerns at the forefront, both with the anime and the things going back and behind the scenes. This saga was the crunch point. Either Super was going to survive and turn out okay, or it was going to crash and burn with its first major saga that wasn't derived from the movie. Luckily for us though, it turned out fine, and we ended up with a series which concluded, so far, pretty well. Dragon Ball has a decent future ahead of it. However, the same saga threw up a lot of conjecture as it was being developed and it actually was being aired. It also cured a massive itch for the community, seeing a properly evil Goku, or at least a mainstream and official facsimile of sorts. Evil Goku has been a staple of fan-made series and artwork for decades, and now it has been realised in a canon guise. But as this saga was being aired, another theory arose, one that boggled the mind, and yet we couldn't turn away from it due to its momentary intrigue. What if Goten was the Black we saw, not Goku? Yes, if you are new to Super or you forgot, there was a long time, a good few months before Black's identity was revealed properly, that we thought it was Goten. Like, seriously, that was a thing. Yes, it turned out not to be the case, of course, but when Goku Black was fresh in our minds, everything was a valid theory. There was a real idea that Goten was the starting point for this monster of the future. But I hear you say, how? Goten didn't exist in this universe. Well, knowing what we know now, I would like to make a little one-shot for you all to illustrate what might happen if Goten was the initial step of this grand plan of Zamasu's instead of using Goku. What if the fallen Kai chose to take his plan in another direction? A more nefarious one, a more psychological one that involved Goku's own kid, as some sort of more twisted punishment for the mortal that had wronged him oh so much. Well, as always my dear friends, let's set the scene. And if you enjoy this, be sure to like and subscribe for more of these stories. Thank you. Let's go. Right, let's start this off at the point of Zamasu's confrontation with Goku during their own investigations in Universe 10. The Kai had just fought a Saiyan, a living being, who had managed to equal him in power. Little did he know that Goku had way more in the tank if he'd called upon it, if he needed it. Can you imagine how Zamasu would have felt if he had been completely trounced by Goku? By this Saiyan? Whew, he got off easy. The Kai spent many nights after that, agonising over this good-as defeat of his. He had been wronged very badly by this interloper and monstrosity of the order that had been in place for countless eons. Mortals and Kais were different. Kais, they dominated mortals. In this universe, things start off with the zero mortal plan the way they do in the original, all the way up to the moment with the wish to steal Goku's body. That bit changes, and this is the crux of this story. Future Zamasu has been doing some digging and realizes that Goku has a family, as well as 2 children. The past Zamasu has put forward the notion to wish for their consciousness to be planted into Goku's body. You know, to act like some kind of ironic twist for the future of mortal beings. But in this world, future Zamasu has other ideas for this universe. Wait, my friend, I have a better idea. Something more poetic and fitting for our glorious plan. He has a boy, a young one. What could be more horrific than to see your own progeny be used against you? To see what you had brought into the world fall so spectacularly before your eyes? Yes, you are right. That is far more deserving of that mortal's defiance of the gods. And with that, they make their wish on the dragon. On that timeline's Earth, Goku, Chi-Chi and Goten are out in the fields taking a break after a particularly busy day. It had been going rather well, and things were looking up for this year's harvest. The family would be doing okay, and their idea going into farming and agriculture was looking prosperous for the first time. It wouldn't last. Suddenly, Goten's body begins to glow, and before anybody could process what the hiffle was going on, his body transformed into a fully grown adult's body, a green-skinned body, in Goten's clothes. Goku and Chi-Chi were aghast. What had happened to their son? Goten had no idea either. He clasped his body and was frantically trying to figure things out when his own father was struck down, his guard very much not up. And as we know from Dragon Ball Super, if Goku's guard is down, even a simple projectile could harm him in some way, and pretty badly too. Zamasu was aware that Goten's body wouldn't be as strong as his father's at this point in time, but he knew that it had tons of potential, as well as many years to then assimilate with God Ki from Zamasu's mind, and by the time it became an adult and matured, who knows? Therefore, future Zamasu aided more directly than in the original at this point. When Goku was on the floor, injured more than he would have thought, Chi-Chi ran over to him and cradled his pained head. Before them, and their now transferred son, were two beings. One that resembled the Kai that Goku had fought not that long ago, and the other was their son, in a Kai uniform. How in the... What in the... You need not concern yourselves, mortals. Your part in this plan is now over. Be gone. With that, both Zamasus fired upon the couple, and both of them were destroyed. Goten, in Zamasu's body, watched his parents die, and he was desperately trying to go Super Saiyan. But he couldn't. I mean, how could he? He wasn't in a body that was able to transform into that. He was stuck. You see that, child? Said future Zamasu with a twisted grin. Your father's doomed not only yourself, but also every single living thing in reality. You and your family are but the first to experience what it means to be put truly in your place. Goten's last thing he saw was his own body and this green freak firing upon them, and then nothing. The Son family had been eviscerated. How do you feel, my friend? Is this body to your liking? Present Zamasu, we'll call him Goten Black for the sake of clarity, spoke with this more youthful voice, but yet it sounded more terrifying given the fact it's a child talking, even though it's an adult mind.
It is interesting. Its power is smaller than I would like, but it has tons of potential within. We can certainly still prove our point to all mortals, though.
Future Zamasu nodded. Indeed we can. Perhaps seeing a child cause such carnage and chaos will be all the more enjoyable and effective. Let us begin then. Over the years that followed, as they traversed reality, Goten Black and future Zamasu enacted their plan as it was in the original. This time though, the Zamasai thrilled more in seeing these worlds that had been taken down and the heavenly beings that were then decimated, more so than in the original. They had fun. There was something about stealing the next generation away from the very Saiyan that had wronged them, which felt more cathartic and rejuvenating, enjoyable even. It was a more barbaric punishment in their eyes than simply just stealing Goku's body, though that was too basic. This was far more elaborate and potent. And granted, Goten Black's power wasn't as immense right out of the gate, but they could easily fix that with training and experience. Sure enough, after a decade of their mission, Goten's body had grown up into an adult's body, Zamasu ensuring that Black's hair was kept looking identical to Goku's hair as they had progressed through the galaxy and learnt more about Goku and his legacy. They felt it, based on that research, more fitting to keep Goku's look the same, so that the person that had saved the universe so many times over the years would be, at least to the layman, the same thing that ultimately would destroy them. As you know, Zamasu does like his symbolism. Okay, Masako, this is all well and good, but is Goten's body really strong enough and useful enough to be viable come the start of the actual conquest of Earth? Well, for the purposes of this certain story, we believe so. For one good reason that we had just stated, the Zamasai would train more. Instead of relying on their latent power already, which was quite big from the get-go, both of the Kais would be making a conscious effort to improve, to make sure that Goten's body would mature into something beautiful and magnificent that would strike fear into everything that would dare get in their way, even gods of destruction. After all, Zamasu had noted that the Goku had trained for decades up until that point, and that body of his, and by proxy his children's too, could become mighty if used effectively. So, when the time came for the Kais to almost complete their plan, they wound up on Earth, and their destruction was just as it was in the series, all the way up until the point where Trunks called upon the past for help. Goten Black saw Trunks run away from this battle, and with the help of the time ring in his possession, he decided to pay the past a visit himself. When he got there, he could see that future Trunks that he'd been hounding for years was looking back at him, as well as that Goku person whose son they had stolen from him. However, as far as the past could tell, this wasn't Goten's body they were looking at. It looked like Goku. Trunks had said so, he assuming it was Goku. The creative significance behind future Zamasu's aesthetic, that was lost on them. But no matter. What this would mean is that the battle between Goten Black and present Goku was a lot less one-sided. The battle was something that Goku took more seriously this time, instead of his half-baked foray that we saw in the anime. In fact, Goten Black, having trained, had come across a power that was unique to Saiyans. He could go Super Saiyan. Thank you, S-Cells. And also remember in the manga, he could go Super Saiyan Goku Black, and that was about when they actually started to focus and try. So that bit came earlier in this story. Now witnessing Super Saiyan Goten Black, the battle went back into the future's favor, and this meant our Goku had to go Super Saiyan God to keep up, not just dominate. The fight meant that Goku was actually being hurt this time around, all this proving that future Trunks' concerns were wholly justified. Instead of what we got in the show, the confused mutterings that were present when we first saw this, you know, Trunks struggling against things, you really were struggling against this thing? Which is the vibe that I got when I first watched the series. And you kind of felt that Goku was kind of going to Trunks, really? This is a problem to you? What? The only thing that kept Goku from being quite badly injured here and having to go Super Saiyan Blue to defend was the fact that time had decided to look back in Goten Black's direction and metaphorically drag him back into the future. Instead of being almost mortally wounded, Goten Black was more fatigued and battered up, but he would recover faster and be more in the know about what he had faced. Back in the future, future Zamasu and he would drink some tea and converse about what had occurred. You mean to tell me that you experienced God Ki from within a mortal? Supposed future Zamasu to his compatriot.
Indeed, brother. There is no mistaking that sensation, that lack of organic power flowing from them. It was almost as if I were sparring with my former master for a moment.
All the more reason to firmly bring this plan of ours to a conclusion.
Must we, brother?
Said Goten Black, almost with a degree of tempestuousness, like he was having a bit of a tantrum, albeit a bit subdued.
I quite enjoy toying with that Trunks boy. Do we really have to end things?
I enjoy it too, but the plan comes first. Remember that.
Alas, it does.
They drank their tea and began to formulate their next move. They would consider blowing up Earth there and then, letting Trunks come back to nothing, but that would be too easy. As we know, Zamasu, in whatever guise he chooses, likes to grandstand. It was one of his many flaws, both in-world and as a character. Things then proceed as they do in the original show, with the next 2 trips to the future going as they had done in the anime. Things don't change there. Things begin to deviate again when we get Goku being impaled by the Keyblade, and future Zamasu then telling him the story of how he got the Saiyan body.
You took my body to make a point?
Spluttered Goku. Oh no, that would be too simple. Far too crude for us, mortal. That mortal body you see before you isn't you. It is your youngest. Goku's eyes widen. He had been fighting Goten? His son was capable of that kind of monstrous power? As the flashback was being relayed to Goku now, this hit home far more than it did originally. Instead of the Zama side taking Goku's body and killing his family, I mean that was bad enough of course, They had stolen Goten's body instead, and used it to commit such horrors and atrocities. It was something that struck more fear than anger into Goku's being. What a cruel and hideous means of getting back at him, using his son. This caused Goku to explode more so than in the show, and this actually did more damage to Goten Black and future Zamasu. But remember, this does nothing ultimately, because this still meant that the heroes would have to go back one more time to regroup. But this time around, our enemies had far more going for them. They had actually caused fear. This meant that by the time the main characters returned for the third and supposed final time, fused Zamasu turned up far earlier than before, and its power was more intense and assured than ever. Its mood far more confident and convicted, and this would mean its chances of becoming corrupted was far lower. Granted, Goten Black in the story is still mortal, a mortal component of this fusion, but the corruption in that form came about through persistent regeneration after Blue Goku took the fight seriously and had managed to get through to it one-on-one. But in this world, the power of the Kai fusion was far more concentrated. So yeah, in this timeline, not only would our heroes have experienced a more tormented timeline, but it would have resulted in their defeat ultimately. The fused Kai witnessing the demise of not only future Trunks, but also these foolish mortals from the past that had tried to take them down. All from the simple idea that Goten's potential had been taken more to heart by the Kai, and they had actually trained instead of simply relying on their godly powers. Short and sweet, but I reckon it's something to think about. And also, it's far better than just seeing Goten sleeping for the majority of the arc, am I right? But what do you folks think? Can you imagine an alternative story to this supposition? Would Goten have been a better choice of vessel for Zamasu to use? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!